For my thesis, I edited and managed post-production workflows for Taylor Toon's VR experience, Art from the Kitchen, as well as Jake Ryan's experimental documentary, Retrospect. Each of these projects tremendously expanded my knowledge of editing, as well as challenged me to experiment in new forms of storytelling. While approaching Art from the Kitchen, I was a bit overwhelmed considering I wasn't too experienced in virtual reality workflows. I had to perform extensive research regarding the cameras, softwares, and specifications we would be using. In addition to editing, I also assisted in shooting this project, which was no simple task. Using the Omni GoPro, we were able to use this 6-lens setup to capture a full 360 image. We had to be super attentive to the space around the camera considering everything in the room would be in frame. We shot at a Vino restaurant in downtown Rochester, which was a beautiful location with super accommodating staff. The shoot seemed to go smooth and we believed we had everything we needed. Fast forward to the next day where I began to go through our footage. The Omni GoPro has 6 different cameras, which in turn gave us 6 media cards as well as 6 images to work with. The first thing I had to do was figure out how to stitch these images into one smooth, viewable video. GoPro has software specifically made for VR called AutoPano Pro and AutoPano Giga. Prior to shooting, I dove right into video tutorials and forums on how to navigate them. To my surprise, these softwares have been discontinued, so the amount of information I could find on them was limited, but I felt like I had a pretty good grasp on what I was doing. Unfortunately, once I began importing the footage, there were many apparent issues. In many spots, the seams of each image were not lining up properly. As you can see, this distorted look was very visible in a majority of what we shot. I didn't give up though and attempted to find a way to salvage the footage. There's a feature in AutoPano which allows you to view all of the stitching points between each image. It'll take 2 of the camera angles with similar data and try to give reference points where each of them are the same. A lot of them weren't accurate, so I took the time to manually adjust each point in order to make all of the references similar. I then went in and added some of my own to give a better representation of what data the images shared. After hours of moving points, there was no sign of progress, so we had to make the decision to reshoot. Sadly, Avino was not available for us to come in, so we had to find another location and ended up on Tapas 177. We also made the decision to change cameras, one that was better known and more reliable. We went with the Ricoh Theta 5, a camera that I briefly had used in the past. What's nice about the Theta is there are only 2 cameras, which gave us a lesser chance of stitching errors, as well as the fact that the stitching happens right in the camera. So I was able to import right into Premiere and edit the 2D footage it gave me. Before shooting at Tapas, we made sure to shoot some test footage to make sure we wouldn't run into the same problem. Everything went well in the shoot and the footage imported cleanly into Premiere. The only extra thing I had to do was mask over the tripod in some of the shots. So we split this project into a few different scenes, going off of the basis that we were going to give the viewer the experience of actually being in a restaurant. From here, it was just like editing any normal footage. I was able to create a piece that kept the viewer engaged and entertained. I feel that my use of transitions and text were able to highlight the scenes and turn it into something that had never been done before. For Jake's film Retrospect, the creative process was immensely different than the VR narrative. Since it's a documentary, we had to get interviews, B-roll, etc. I'd have to say documentary filmmaking is my personal favorite art form to create. Everything is sort of up in the air and waiting to be figured out until you get to the edit, where you can really begin piecing together the narrative and really start to shape the project. What makes this film different is that this concept is a bit elevated considering we didn't capture any video of the people we interviewed. We solely made the driving force of the story reliant on the voices and the visuals. This didn't allow me to rely on interview footage to cut back and forth to, which was a challenge but made working on this that much more exciting. The theme of this film is regrets. What regrets people have, how they deal with them, and how they overcome them. Not only did the radical documentary style of this work intrigue me, this overall relatable concept really drew me in to want to work on this. The fact that regret is something everyone at some point goes through made me want to hear other people's stories and their perspectives on it. So right away, what Jake did was he found a range of different people of all ages and backgrounds and interviewed them. asking about things regarding their regrets, how they deal with those experiences, and their proudest moments in life. As soon as I got all the audio, I began to listen and dissect the interviews to piece out the best and most profound sound bites that would impact the film the most. During this process, all the collaborators and I met once a week to review and discuss the emotion we were going for, how well the sound bites we had fit with the story, as well as what visuals we wanted to capture to convey this emotion. After we figured out generally what we were going for, Jake, Sierra, and Emma went out to shoot a variety of scenes focusing mainly on nature. We decided on this outdoor aesthetic mainly to convey a sort of meditative and reflective element to this piece. From here, we just went week by week, creating a cohesive story with the interviews, going out to shoot, and applying that footage to the edit. While shooting, they made sure to get long takes, which I was then able to hold on to again give the film a more pensive style to it, while also allowing the viewer to really listen and think about the words being said.
Now, as a person who's more mature, I do look back on that and kind of wonder if I had allowed myself to be where I was most passionate in, I would have probably been a lot happier.
Eventually, after many revisions and long hours editing, we ended up with the finished product, which I'm super proud of. While editing, I took advantage of something called palette gear, which is a series of buttons, dials, and sliders used to make editing smoother and more efficient. What's nice about this is it allows you to customize your setup to your own personal needs. You can make any configuration you want and then go in and set up each module to perform a different function. For instance, you can make the buttons perform top or tail edits, add effects with specific presets, and have the knobs and sliders scrub through the timeline, adjust audio, opacity, color temperature, you name it. Since I was able to customize my setup based on what program and project I was working on, having this certainly made me a more efficient and rounded editor. Looking back on the past 4 years, I'm truly grateful for all the connections I've made and everything I've learned that has greatly improved my filmmaking abilities. From the very first film I made at SOFA to working on my thesis, I wouldn't take back a single moment, whether that be anything from the mistakes I've made to the happiness that I've found in this career path.